Alright, everyone, it's Koyamamura from the Existentialist Non Grata. Episode 2 of Aku Hana is on the agenda today. We're going to talk a lot about the mindset that Kasuge had. So, his philosophy, right? How he rationalized doing what he did and the consequences of that, right? So, just to give you a very quick rundown on what he did, we see him develop some kind of a savior complex, right? And he is determined to rescue Nakamura. How that came to be was, Nakamura got very angry at him because he was indecisive. That's what we saw in the last week. He was very indecisive, so Nakamura got very mad at him, and Kasuge feels like a betrayer, right? So he vows to take her to the so-called other side. An interesting phenomenon arises, which we might get into, whereas before, Nakamura and Sawa, the preppy girl, was, siphoning off of Kasuge, right? Their identity was derived from him. Now we see the opposite, where Kasuge, is siphoning off of Nakamura, and a very interesting phenomenon occurs where he feels like he has a direction now. He feels as if there is conviction in him. He knows what to do, and overall he's more he's more. Yeah, direction is the word. I don't have to beat a dead horse, right? He feels like he has a direction, right? He knows where he's going now, and that makes him act more boldly. It makes him act with more conviction, like I said. At the same time, however, when asked to reflect if he feels happy or not, that's when he doesn't know, right? He doesn't actually know if he feels content, satisfied with what exactly doing. Right, because it's new territory now, right? He hasn't gone boldly with this direction. He hasn't gone boldly with deciding to fully embrace the unacceptable of being socially, just being socially degenerate, I suppose. And yeah, so that's what we're gonna talk about, right? The cost of what his mindset was that made him decide to do what he did, and then the psychological and social consequences of that. I'll begin this conversation by alluding to another book, which was it was a book that we did last month, called Possessed, right, by Dostoevsky. And I'm not going to get into the book too much. However, starting at the end, by also referencing the build-up of Aku Hana, with all the festivals, with all the decisions to burn down the festival, with the hideout in the tent, it does remind me a lot of the characters from Possessed, in that they do have a lot of conviction. They do have a lot of assuredness in what they are doing is the correct path, but they do feel deep discontent within themselves. They are a bit miserable. And if you ask them why they're doing what they're doing, they have a very they have a cause that they're backing up, not by polemics, but more by intuitive conviction, I suppose, where it's more grounded in rhetoric than actual coherent thought process. And if you look at Kasuge, right, that kind of sounds like what he's going through, where you kind of put him under scrutiny and say, all right, buddy, what's the thought process that's making you do what you're doing, which is to steal all the underwear from the locker room, make a statue of it in the front lawn, and of course burn the festival down. Like if you put him under scrutiny, under a magnifying glass and asks him, all right, buddy, why exactly are you doing? What's the reasoning behind this? What's the rationale behind this? I would make the bet that he wouldn't be able to tell. However, in his heart of hearts, right, he feels it, right? It's instinctively to him something that's right to do, and that's something very common in the aforementioned book Possessed, where as long as you convince yourself that what you're doing is the right thing, you will be assured in your actions without having to reason it out, right? One of the aphorisms or the one-liners that I always have in my head is, be aware of those who are too eager to seek the truth because they're the first ones to believe in a lie, right? In these 17 chapters, I get the sense that Kasuge is very blinded by what he's doing, but he does it anyways. So, yeah, so I guess it is a bit misleading to say that we're going to talk about his philosophy today, because it is a bit hard to pinpoint it. But that's a brief overview of what went through my mind when reading it, right? It's a lot of blind devotion, and it's a lot of conviction that's it's a lot of conviction that's at the same time a source of discontent. Those two would be the two main points that I got reading the book. I don't know, but I want to hear your takes now.
I mean, these whole few chapters have just been a complete roller coaster that has completely changed the book. I really don't know how to reconcile much of what I thought about Kasuga in the first few sections, 18, 19. Because it seemed to me that, after the last session, after the mountain, Kasuga was sort of in this depressed state. He couldn't go to the other side, he couldn't do anything. And then he just suddenly realised Nakamura must be so much more worse off than him, and so he did his best to try to sort of comfort Nakamura, which seems to work, and it seems to make sense for a few more chapters. And they sort of make this other side, this container, they have fun. They almost look like they sort of abuse each other. Or rather, Nakamura abusing Kasuga. And them having fun from that, it seems to hint at. But then, at the end, chapter 32 and 33, when they almost commit joint suicide, I really don't know how to interpret that. But my view is that Kasuga just wanted Nakamura to feel happier than he was after the mountain.
Yeah. So it is a bit it is quite of a turn of events, right? Because in the first sessions, right, in the first 17 chapters, we seem very meek. We seem very. He admits himself. He's very hollow. He's very, he can't do anything, and now he's determined to do all these things. He's surprised in Nakamura, right? Even Nakamura is like, whoa, what's going on here, right? Just when I failed to peel off the layers of Kasuge, lo and behold, he peeled it off himself, and that's kind of, the question that I lodged at you guys, right? And you've answered it perfectly, right? It really was a roller coaster, and you really don't know what to make of it, right? And like I said, my take on it is that he just develops a savior complex, to as you said, save someone in a much worse position than him, and that's basically my take, and I wanted to hear your take. Actually, do you have anything to say, or?
No, carry on. I'm still forming my thoughts.
No problem. So yeah, the other thing that I want to mention is a lot of subtle metaphors, right? A lot of this book analysis is talking about the philosophy behind the text, but I think when the literature is very subtle, it's worth mentioning, especially if it relates to the philosophy of the text. So we see in the early chapters, right, around chapter 19, he's disconnected with his family, right? His mother is very ashamed of him, and his dad is very ashamed of him. He's very ashamed of himself. Rumor has it that Sawa and Kasuge broke up, right? And then, as we mentioned, Sawa last week, Sawa is like the poster boy for, Sawa is the poster girls, I should say, for all things normal, right? It's a very
Saeki, not Sawa.
Oh, well, I saw her name was Saeki. Sawa Saeki. Okay,
Saeki Nanako and Sawa Nakamura.
All right. Okay. Sorry, listeners. I meant Saeki. Okay, cool. Yeah. So Sawa is it Sawa Nakamura?
Yes.
Okay. Oof. I owe the audience an apology. Every time I said Sawa, I meant Saeki. Okay. So yeah, Saeki. I'm sure the context helped though, because I said Sawa is the poster girl for all things normal, right? So Saeki is the poster girl for all things normal, right? And this guy Kasuge, rumor has it that they broke up, rumor, and so really we are seeing a disconnect from all things normal, right? Last week Elliot talked about how Kasuge is trying to find that middle ground between abnormal and normal. He's trying to find the best of both worlds, and he failed miserably. And then it's like, it is very interesting, right? Because after both the normal and the abnormal rejects him, right? So Nakamura rejects him, which is abnormal. Family, relationship, and family and Saeki rejects him, which is the normal. They both reject him, and now Kasuge is like, all right, you know what? I'm not gonna work in moderation anymore. I'm gonna go to extremes. And it is very interesting that he did go to the side of abnormal, because if both sides are rejecting you, then in theory you could go straight to the normal more than just as much as you went to the abnormal, because both sides are rejecting you. Now you could argue that if your family and girlfriend rejects you, that's a lot more heavy than just some crazy abusive outcast. So yeah, I think trying to infer as to the reasons why he picked the abnormal rather than the normal when both sides rejected him really does help, right? So I think part of the reason is, one, the savior complex, right? As he wrote in his notes, right? And he found out in Nakamura's notes that Nakamura is going through a lot worse. So it's like, oh, I have to be a white knight and save her, right? There is also the case that it's not just like because Saeki is the poster girl for a normal society. If Saeki rejects her, then it's almost like the entire society is rejecting her, right? And so that's school, that's public life, all that, and so that could be one of the reasons why he just snaps and he just goes all abnormal, right? If it's like, if no one's gonna accept me, then I might as well be very good at being unaccepted, right? I'm not gonna suffer in the unacceptedness, right? And maybe that's what he's doing, right? Maybe it's like, all right, well, the normal is making me unhappy, so I'm gonna go find happiness in the abnormal. And of course, Saeki asks, hey, Kasuge, are you happy? And he just doesn't know. So yeah, that's another pointer that I should talk about, right? Where it's like why he went to the abnormal when both sides rejected him.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm a bit brain dead today. But I think that after finding out, like after the chapter 17, where they couldn't cross over to the other side. Uh, he he had a ideological breakdown. I don't know how to express it, but it'll be. Uh, so I think after that he tried to, instead of preserving, like instead of letting go of his perverted idea of his self, he tried to manifest it by his actions. And yeah, I'm still thinking. So
Yeah, don't worry about being brain dead. I've been brain dead for the entire The Brothers Karamazov book club, so it's all good. Um, uh, yes. Now, but then the question still remains, right? Why does he want to manifest that part of himself, right? Why does he want
to distinguish himself, that's, I guess that was pretty apparent when he had this conversation with his dad while he was trying to escape. Uh, I think there's, like, teenagers have this, like, at the time when you're becoming cognizant of the realities of the world, you set these sort of unrealistic standards for yourself, and then you also see that normal people don't usually have those standards for themselves. So yeah, it's, I guess, to try and find some meaning in their, when the abyss is staring at them.
And well, here's my final note on this whole part, right? Just some personal anecdotes, I guess. Now that you think of it, like, just me looking around, I do think it is very common for teenagers to take refuge in the extreme, right? They're not content with having their bare necessities met, right? They seem to have very lofty goals of what they should be. And another phenomenon that occurs is, this is around the time when you're, I guess, facing your parents kind of gets questioned, right? Where when you were a kid, it's like what they said was gospel, it was doctrine, it was truth, but then you kind of go through middle school and you're kind of forging your own identity, and almost like a rebellious phase, you go into the extreme, right? Just to convince yourself that you're different, that you're special, right? So it is very much the case, I think, that Nakamura is is the new Flowers of Evil poetry book, right? You could tell. One thing that's noteworthy is the fact, not what's in the chapters here, but what isn't. And the Flowers of Evil is seldom mentioned, it's seldom brought up and depicted, and when it does, if I recall correctly, he burns it, right? And that's because he found a new Flowers of Evil poetry book. It's in Nakamura, right? He wanted to intellectually dive into the abnormal, but now he has it, so he wanted to intellectually dive into the normal. Nakamura saw that, so Nakamura was like, all right, you seem like a good candidate. Let's actually put it into action. And then Kasuge's like, oh, I can't. And then Nakamura gets very upset. And then now, and then Kasuge makes the decision to, actually put it into action. And so it is a very symbolic gesture that he burned the book. It's not that he was burning a drive to go into the absurd or abnormal. Quite the opposite, right? He was saying, you know what, this book ain't good enough anymore. I'm gonna step it up. And burning it was like symbol of dedication. Right, so he's really into it now. He's really into the absurd, and
So Baudelaire calls like his this like I think we talked about it last time about purity and this impiousness. So it's like the normal would be the ideal that was his muse in Saeki, and to Baudelaire. So yeah, he rejects the ideal, and I think that's something that Baudelaire does that in his book as well.
yeah, and we see him go through scenarios of being dedicated to this cause, right? Doing more vandalizing, things like that, just to prove himself. There is something about there is something awfully comforting about being in the negative than in the positive, because for me at least, when you do anything for a consecutive amount of times, right? It's like let's say you're playing chess with someone and you win 5 games in a row. There is that pressure to win the 6th game just to make it consecutive. At least I have that thing, right? That kind of obsessive compulsion to keep the good things rolling, right? And I think for him, the pressure was very hard for him to be normal, right? To be acceptable, when really he wasn't, right? He had a lot of tendencies that were very unacceptable. And speaking of this, right? I think this is exactly what made Saeki, the preppy one, like Kasuge, because just like Kasuge, Saeki was repressing it all along, right? That whatever divergence with social acceptability, she had to repress, and so the pressure was on her a lot too, right? Like, to be, that good, that good member of society. And so I think she saw in Kasuge an escape, right? And and I don't think it occurred to her that one can be, a degenerate, right? One can go down to zero and seemingly live with conviction, right? Seemingly live with that kind of sense of direction. All her life, she probably thought that to be accepted, she had to be excellent in different fields. And then there's Kasuge, who's like a complete degenerate, and it's like, oh man, it's like, how can he get away with it, right? And how can someone like me, who's I've played the piano, I did this, I get good grades, I did all that, and society respects me, parents respect me, teachers respect me. Why not Kasuge, right? Why is Kasuge the one person that's not respecting me, right? There's an outlier, right? I have all these inputs, which is being excellent, and then the output is, being respected. And then there's Kasuge. So I think that's, I think Saeki is still trying to siphon off of Kasuge. Now, the important thing is that although there is something, although Saeki finds something attractive in Kasuge, which is his unabashed being in zero, there is the sense that Saeki does not want him to go lower, right? He does not want him to go too low, because if he goes too low, she fears that he is going to go closer and closer to Nakamura, right? So it's not that she wants to go low; it's that she wants to bring him up, right? It's a lot of women, especially women who date prisoner inmates. We talked about this in the Brothers Karamazov. There are cases where they have this like fantasy where the dude is like a complete degenerate. He's probably murdered a lot of people, and then it's like with her feminine charm, like, oh, she can save him, right? And I think that's kind of what's happening right now, right? And that's why like in the end she makes unsolicited advances towards him. So yeah, I think we can shift the focus on Saeki now, right? We've talked a lot about Kasuge's motivations, why he's doing what he's doing, teenage rebellion, to put it simply, but also being rejected by society and embracing, what he's always found in poetry. So now we can talk about Saeki, right? And I think we also see savior complex in her. Actually, are you still doing push to talk?
Nah, I'm still thinking. I'm still on push to talk, but I'm just thinking. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Saeki for me, like I gave this impression of we have a square and we can see that there is a third dimension, but we don't really know what that third dimension is. Not much has seemed to change. I can't, I sort of agree that she does sort of grow a savior complex, and she does sort of want to elevate Kasuga and tries to take him away from the sort of perversity of Nakamura. But something that sort of strikes me the most is how quick she was to sort of understand the concept of the other side, and also to reject that concept. Because even I'm not entirely sure what that's supposed to mean, as in sort of quite a live city, some sort of entertainment in the city, or another side of life. And she's sort of stepped in. She knows that she's acting normal. She knows that she's acting like, the first side. So why is she so quick to reject another side when she's just an actor? I know, I'm taking this mostly from chapter 29, when she starts talking to Kasuga about misunderstanding, and
yes.
Really not sure how to interpret all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, she cuts her hair.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That happened.
We never see her cutting her hair. We just see her hair cut.
Yeah. But yeah, her relationship to the other side is sort of what most intrigues me about her character.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of lodged a two-part question, right? And we do see evidences for both. The obvious, we do see more obvious evidence for the first one, the first question, which was her quick understanding of the so-called other side. Now, how do we know that we understand it? Well, okay, one of the first examples is that her best friend is her best friend is like, this is not good, we should call the cops. And then Saeki is like, no man, let me deal with it myself. And then so not only does she understand the other side, no, I don't think she does understand the other side. I think what's intriguing her is that she doesn't understand that other side, right? And so that's why she fears that if the authorities come in, she wouldn't be able to solve it anymore, right? The case is going to be closed, it's going to be archived, and she won't be able to reach it, right? Whereas if she kept probing into it, right, and it's like, all right, dude, like, what's all this about? Why is Kasuga with Nakamura? Then it's like, all right, cool, I can kind of integrate Kasuge, see what the deal is, try to connect the dots, right? So I don't think she does know what the other side is. I think she desperately wants to know. I don't think it's ever occurred to her that one could, go to 0 and live there, right? All her life she had to go to 10. She had to do this and that to be accepted. So I don't think she even rejects the other side because she doesn't even know it, right? She doesn't even know what she's rejecting. She's been accustomed so much to the high plane that it's not even a rejection because she doesn't even acknowledge it exists. But so she doesn't acknowledge it exists, but she knows that something is there, and that's what she's trying to find out. That's my take. I don't think she's actually quick to understand it. Quite the contrary. Oops.
So you're sort of saying that she's stuck in a limbo, like Kasuga was. We were talking about that in the last meeting. So she doesn't know what the other side is, but she might want to get to it because she's somewhere between the other side and her persona.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Sort of, yeah. I don't think she actually, because I don't think she feels she belongs in the 10. But that's all the world she's known. So obviously you have to pretend, right? If there's no other option, then you pretend. And then in comes Kasuge, and it's like he introduces her to the 0, right? And I mean not only that, but Kasuge represents kind of like the bridge to that 0, right? Because it's like if he represents the 0, then why couldn't Saeki feel drawn to Nakamura? Well, it's like, because Nakamura was too far alien, right? She was too alien. She was too distant. It's too extreme. Like it's unrelatable. But someone like Kasuge, who was in the limbo, who was trying to reconcile both sides, right? That's a biteable chunk. And the way he talked about, one thing that Saeki said was, the way he talked about his book, which he coincidentally burned, was just very charming to her, yada yada yada. And that's when I think she realized that, there is someone that doesn't have to be accomplished. There is someone that, can fail his math test and still be enthusiastic about something, right? Still be passionate about something. And she wants that, right? She doesn't. It's not that. See, when you said that she wants to go to, Saeki wants to go to the other side, I don't think it's that. I don't think that's the case. It's less about going to the other side. Sorry, the garage. It's less about going to the other side and more about not having to be on her side, right? And so that's why he really wants Kasuge to not go lower, because she now wants to be in that limbo, of not having to be top 10 but not degenerating all the way down to 0. And so which really makes sense, because she asks Kasuge, right, like, are you really happy, right? Are you really happy falling so low? Right, so it's okay. Now it's interesting. All right, so see, it just popped in my mind because this is what's happening here, right? So all her life, Saeki was pretending to be a 10, right, to be very high, and she felt miserable. And now, for the first time in his life, Kasuge is pretending to be a 0, and instinctively, Saeki detects that. She doesn't know what the 0 is, but she does detect that Kasuge is trying to be extreme. And so because Saeki has been trying to be extreme all her life, just in the opposite direction, but extreme nonetheless, Saeki asks Kasuge, are you happy? So, yes and no to your question, right? No, she doesn't understand that other side. No, she doesn't understand what the zero is. But yes, she understands that Kasuge is pretending. Yes, Kasuge understands that if he continues this, he's gonna fall into the same mistakes, same traps as Saeki did, right? And so that's why she kind of wants to save him, right? How does she do this? Well, she tries to seduce him. Now it's very noteworthy that doesn't work. Whereas Nakamura just downright belittles, humiliates him, and that just all the more attracts him, right? So we really do see that dynamic where Kasuge can't be on top, right? And he doesn't want to be on top. He wants to, be at the mercy of someone else, and that's what he's drawn to. Because because this is one of those things where when you, and I know I talked and I'm saying a lot of points, so this is my last point. Sorry. I really do think that he wants to be at the mercy of something, because when you do that, you kind of have to, surrender in a way that makes you very liberated, because you don't have to control anything. And all his life, he had to control his repression, right? He had to repress it. He had to control his impulses, and now he doesn't have to control any of that, right? He could just transfer responsibility to someone else. And that's why I don't think that's why I don't think he can't feel attracted to Saeki. And it's kind of cool that Saeki turned herself into the police. But yeah, I'll let you take the mic.
Well, yeah, you did say a lot, but it does make a lot of sense. I can't really think of many reasons that would be wrong other than just, bad luck. But yeah, I think that is actually quite a great way to view Saeki. Sort of, she doesn't want to go to the other side, but she wants to build a limbo with Kasuga, where they can just sort of live happily. They don't have to be horrible people, they don't have to be really good people, they can just be.
Oh crap. I have a blood clot. Excuse me. Alright.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm back. So yeah, I think the whole deal with Saeki can be deal down to being tired of being in extremes. And she can't articulate that to Kasuge, right? So she's trying to save him nonetheless. Whereas Kasuge was, she's tired of the extremes, so she wants to be in the middle. And Kasuge is trying to be in the middle all his life, sorry. So now he's trying to go into the abnormal. And now this isn't really a spoiler for next week, so I think I can. No, actually, no, I won't say. I'll say it next week. But yeah. So then it gets pretty cool, right? Because Kasuge tries to save. No, Saeki tries to save Kasuge, who's trying to save Nakamura, and then once Saeki realizes she failed, she goes to the police, and they have to talk to the authorities, like the teachers, the dean, things like that, and then blah blah blah. And then Kasuge is on a house arrest. Meanwhile, Nakamura's house vandalized. So it's all pretty bad now. And then Nakamura brings in a baseball bat, breaks into Kasuge's homes and gets him out of there. And they go to some abandoned house, which, again, for the first time in a dozen and a half chapters, they are able to see, we are able to see Nakamura's philosophies, right? Nakamura's mindset, Nakamura's headspace, right? What's the rationale, right? It's kind of like a repeat of there's a whole structure to it, right? Because even in the first reading, it's like we see what Nakamura's going through, we see how Saeki is reacting, and then all this time we know that Nakamura's going through something, but then we don't see it till the end. And it's the same thing again, right? We don't see Nakamura till the end. And when we do see her, it's in the little abandoned house. And she says, Kasuge says, let's go to the other side. And in tears, Nakamura says, what does she say?
To bash her head in.
Did she say that? The thing that
Yeah, she gave him the bat and he was like, yeah.
Because no matter where I go, I wouldn't be able to disappear.
Yeah.
My final order: bash my brains in with this bat. Smash,
okay.
burst, and splatter.
Yeah, so you're both right. Yeah. I was referring to the no matter where I go, I won't be able to disappear, right? So it's all kind of like an aha moment, right? Like to Kasuge, the other side was like an actual existent place, right? He thought it was in his mind. He realized that it was in real life, right? So it's kind of like Dmitri from the Brothers Karamazov, where it's like, oh, if I go to this village, life will be good. All the miseries of this small Russian town will be gone, and it won't be here in the next village. If I go to America, like many of my friends are, it's gonna be good, right? So that's Kasuge, and then we kind of assume, take it for granted, that's what Nakamura is like, but then it's like lo and behold, it's like, because no matter where I go, I won't be able to disappear, and it's like, well, maybe he's not trying to go to the other side at all, but rather, she's just trying to die, right? She's just trying to, maybe die is too harsh of a term, but she's trying to get rid of what it means to be alive, right? A lot of the experiences that you have to go through, of growing up, of socializing, of being with other people, of being assimilating into modern society. She doesn't want any of that, right? And she wants to go somewhere where she can just not do with any of that, right? Just be reclusive, just be a shut-in, and just disappear. But I think at this point she realizes that not only was she trying to run away from society, not only was she running away from the system, right, from modernity, from modern society, all that, she was also trying to run away from herself, right? I think this was the point where she realized that wherever she goes, she is the one that's going there, right? So it's like, that's the problem, because she's trying to run away from her own psyche, which is something that's processing her experiences, right? So as long as she has her psyche, which is processing the experiences, in a way her experiences it's going to be there. It's almost like post-traumatic stress disorder, where it's like you kind of relive your traumas, right? Well, it's like it's in her brain, and this will make sense at the very end of the manga. I'm not gonna spoil it, but for anyone listening who's already read it, right? Like, I'll just say the very last chapter, right? And then, the listeners could be like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's that very last chapter. Yeah, I know. Which kind of talks about Nakamura, right? And I think this is when she realized she's not trying to run away from anything in particular, but herself most of all. And like, she realized that, wherever she goes, she can't disappear. She can't run away from herself. And I think all this time Kasuge felt like an escape, right? It felt like an escape path, where if she could focus on humiliating and degenerating Kasuge, right? Focus all her energy on another person. She can forget about herself, but one way or another, she realizes that just ain't happening, and no matter where she goes, she won't be able to disappear.
Yeah, there's a quote in chapter 31. She says, Kasuge, the screams rebounded off you and I understood what the screaming voice was saying. Which does seem to imply that, she sort of in the container burnt down, she did finally realise that, her existence is not something she likes, and even Kasuge is, almost trying to mirror her in some way, it's also not going to bring her any happiness at all. And Kasuge still has this idea, not still, but explains this idea that Nakamura was sort of wants to look into the future, just a few chapters before they meet at the abandoned building. Which I sort of had in my mind that Nakamura could have been a little bit of a... I don't really want to use the term very well, but a sort of despairing nihilist. Who almost... I don't want to explain myself without getting that concept wrong, but she does realise that what she's doing is not going to help. She realises that Kasuge, stealing underwear and whatever isn't going to help her cope in any way. So your view does seem to be very correct to me.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up chapter 31 because it's been something that I have been talking about with some guys last week in the server where it's like, okay, so just to recap, right? So they go to the abandoned house. It's very funny that Kasuge, although hesitantly, he does undress, which never happened with Saeki. But anyways, it's like, oh yeah, dude, I'm gonna peel off the skin, unleash the other side in you, right? She's trying to retrieve the other side from Kasuge. Kasuge realizes, so it's like the other side exists inside of you, which is referring to Nakamura. And then it's like, I want to do anything. I do anything to save you. Nakamura almost kills him. And then Nakamura says, alright, so this is the juicy part, right? It was always screaming out, the pervert within me, screaming out at me in words I couldn't understand. Kasuge, the screams rebounded off of you, and I understood what the screaming voice was saying. I could hear it. I want out. Let me out. Please let me out. Where's the exit? Where's the other side? But I knew there was no other side. There's no this side. There's nothing. No shit eaters, no perverts. There's nothing at all. Because no matter where I go, I won't be able to disappear. So it's like my final order is bash my brains with this bat until there's nothing left. Yeah. Oof. That's a doomer moment, alright. It's and then that's when they make the suicide pact, right? And for the first time in their and then once it goes by it's very interesting that once it goes by the supplies at the supermarket or whatever, that's when they're happy, right? When they're buying all the materials, they have that little sense of content, they have that little content at dying, and I think that's super interesting. But yeah, to your point, Elliot, I do think that this was when she, finally. It wasn't that she realized it at this point. It was that she came to terms with something that she was repressing all along, which was, there was no other side, there was no this side. There was nothing, and she just wanted to deconstruct everything and like put it back to zero, right? Put it back to nothing, to nil. And that's the part that really struck to me was the part where she said, all this time I didn't know what, but like when it bounced off of you, which is referring to Kasuge, that's when she kind of understood the words that were echoing off of Kasuge, right? That's when she knew what these voices were, and that reminded me of something I said with a couple of friends of mine in the server, where it's, let me find it here. It's gonna be real quick. Yeah, it's I've always I've had this realization where it's like, whatever we do, especially me, right? Whatever we do in our lives, we do feel this need to see ourselves reflected back to us. And this is more so the case in an age of individualism, right? Because when you're in a communal, collective environment, that reflection is kind of automatic, right? You see the work you put in, you see it rebound back into the community, right? So it's almost like it's almost more like an organic, a back and forth relationship. But when everything's an individual unit, right, that validation is gone. So I think that need to feel like we belong to something is more and more heightened. And it's evolutionary speaking, it's like we no longer, like I said, we no longer have the means to know if we're part of the tribe or community. And I don't know about you, but it's like when you find a really good song on the internet, right? When you find a really good movie, a really good book, like I just feel the need to tell all my close friends about it. You gotta check out this manga, Aku no Hana. It was so cathartic. It was one of the best manga I've ever read. And it's almost like, I realize it's almost like when I share, I want them to kind of hear me and say, I'll check it out, or yeah, I've been looking for some good mangas lately. I'll give this a read, or yeah, I read that book, right? It was very good. It made me feel XYZ, and then ideally I would go like, yeah, I know, right? That this scene was super good because it made me feel like this, and that connection we have, I think one of the reasons why we want that connection is because we want to know that we exist, right? Hey, we exist. Other people notices us. We are not forgotten. We're not lonely. We're not alone. And I think that's what that's part of what Nakamura wanted, where it's like, despite all the misery, right? Despite repressing that there is no other side, there's no this side, at the very least, she wasn't alone in it, right? At the very least, she has someone to suffer with. That's why in her notebook she wrote, I found another person just like me, right? Which is to say, which isn't to just say I found another person like me, but it's also to say I found someone that understands me, right? I found someone that that if I were to, complain about the way society is, they could understand what I'm going through, they could relate, and my struggles are validated, right? My struggles are accepted, right? It's real. It's not something that's unacceptable. And so in a way, Nakamura too didn't want to be in the extreme, right? Kasuge wanted to go to the extreme, which is to go to the other side, when she realizes that it was in, because he realized it was in Nakamura, so that's why he was drawn there. Both Nakamura and Saeki wanted to get away from the extremes, right? They wanted to, Saeki wanted to go out of the extremes by living on the between. Nakamura wanted to get out of the extremes by just dying. And you can question the message, but they're both not getting away from the extremes. So we really do see a full circle from the first book, because in the first book, in the first few 17 chapters in the first meeting, we do see Nakamura and Saeki siphoning off of Kasuge. And then it's like, we see Kasuge siphon off of Nakamura, And then in the end, it turns out that all this time, Nakamura was still siphoning off of Kasuge, except this time, it's not a realization that he is hollow, it's a realization that she is hollow, right? And I think that's part of why she got really upset when Kasuge said he was hollow in the 17th chapter, because it's like Kasuge was her last hope, right? If she was, because she was already hollow, so she's already screwed, and she found someone to save her. And then it's, so when he said that she was hollow, like, that was just a betrayal. And now they both realize that they're both hollow, and the only exit is death, right? The only exit is dying. And so that's the decision they make, and they come to terms with that, and that's why they're happy buying stuff at the supermarket to go into the festivals. I'll let you comment on any of what I just said, anything or nothing, but whatever the case, after we're done with this, I think it's a good idea to move into the festival itself. But if you have anything to say on what I just said, let's hear it. If not, we'll go into the festival. Alright, going once, going twice, going thrice. Alright, nobody. Okay, cool. So, in regards to the festivals, the thing that struck out to me was they fully accept that there is no, there is no shit eaters, there is no, whatever other derogative terms that you can throw at it, but that's exactly what they say in the festival, right? They make a declaration to the festivals. They make a declaration to the people at the festival that, hey, you're shit eaters, blah 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 blah. And yeah, let me just pull it up here right quickly. Yeah, shit eaters, all you shit eaters of this town. What are you doing? Get down here. And they make this claim that they're gonna get away from it all, right? They're gonna kill themselves right there at the festival. It is interesting that they do tell the audience that they are shit eaters, but I think the most interesting part is when they do make that final farewell. Because the city is hell, living here is hell. Nobody's listening to the blooming sound of the flower, which I guess is a reference to flowers of evil. At the last moment, she does throw Kasuge off of the platform where they were about to burn themselves, and she kind of prevents Kasuge from dying, and we really don't know why that is, or we can only infer as to why that is. And of course, her own dad saves her from killing herself, and then symbolically the flower at the end closes. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, and I really don't have any coherent thoughts like I just, 5 minutes ago. The only thing that I could say is that they wanted to be heard, right? Because, I've talked about loneliness, right? I've talked about trying to see yourself echo off of other people, and they know that it just can't happen. So, what's the next logical step was to make a huge ruckus, right? A huge spectacle that people will talk about, right? Some kind, it's very common in people with delusions of grandeur, but that's what they do. And for some reason or another, Kasuge is thrown off the platform by Nakamura, and we don't know why that is. And if you guys have any thoughts on that, right? Why she would do that? Yeah, please let me know. But in regards to the festival, I don't have any coherent thoughts. No.
I mean, I don't really know what's going on anyway, but something that did go through my mind is that both Nakamura and Kasuga hold this view of the town where it's just completely bleak, completely rusting. Everything into a mess, rusting, rotting, and sinking. And if they were to commit suicide, the whole city would be talking. Not necessarily in a good way, but it would be a lot more busier. There'd be something of substance to the city. That was one of the things that crossed through my mind. Second one, Nakamura may have just sort of noticed she was just completely misleading Kasuga. And it's basically her fault that Kasuga's gotten, riled up in all of this. So Nakamura is that source at which, this sort of fake perversity has seeped into. So Nakamura thought, okay, I'm the source, only I need to die. Kasuga can just live a happy life in this new bustling city with Saeki. That's sort of my idea on it. Whether that's true or not, it's probably not.
Yeah, I had similar thoughts as well. Like, exactly the same.
Similar, did you say?
Yes, like exactly the same
Okay.
idea as you.
Yeah.
But there's more. There has to be more to it, though. Surely.
Yeah, trust me, there is. We just don't want to spoil it for you, but no, like.
Oh.
Yeah, there is a whole reason, but what chapter have you read up to?
33. So it's literally just after they're saved.
Okay, so 33?
Yep, 33. That's the last one I read.
Yeah, so I mean, from here we're gonna take another turn of events, right? And things are gonna go elsewhere, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I really don't know what to make of the festival without spoiling it, but or even if I could spoil it, like it is still pretty obscure, right? It's not a very clear, everything in this book is implicit, right? And let me go to 33. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you finished just at the festival field suicide pact. Do. Yeah, okay, cool. I don't know. There are options, right? Of course, there's what you said. There's also the possibility that there is some hope for Kasuge, because if we're gonna assume that it's true that Kasuge represents the absolute, Nakamura represents the absolute zero, Saeki the wannabe 10, and Kasuge the wannabe Zero, then it's like really Kasuge doesn't really belong on that suicide platform, right? It's Nakamura, and as fate would have it, even Nakamura doesn't actually get to die. But what is interesting is the author leaves out any indication that Nakamura was upset, right? She doesn't. The author doesn't. The author just ends it up on a blank note, right? The author does not leave any, thrashing about, trying to say, let me kill myself. Why won't you let me die? Things like that. We don't see any relief either. We don't see anything at all. And if you go to the next chapter, right, it's gonna go on a completely different tangent. But yeah, I mean I really don't know what else to say about the festival. I think at this point we're beating a dead horse because there's just so many questions, but the author isn't giving us a lot of material to answer it. So I guess we'll leave the festivals to the side. Do you guys have any other topics that you think we overlooked at?
I think something that might be worth noting are Kasuga's parents in this, because we actually get to see some of them and some of their reactions. I believe at one point Kasuga's mother sort of snaps. I think when they told her that they wanted to move away for the summer. And Kasuga's mom just sort of snaps at her saying, think about us. No, I don't know why you're like this. And I'm afraid that I've done everything wrong. She loses all sorts of esteem. And that's a nice little note in the book, I think.
Yeah, and she does have this morbid fear of being a failed parent, right? At the very end, when Kasuge is thrown off the platform, she says, "I'm sorry," right? But we don't really understand. She doesn't really explicitly say what she's sorry for. So we could assume that she's sorry in general for being, to her own mind, a failed parent, right? That Kasuge was driven off to be this way. And yeah, I think the fear that her parent that she has as a parent is just to see Kasuge go to zero, right? In a strange way, despite the differences in methods, both the mother and Saeki wants to pull Kasuge away from the zero, pull Kasuge from the bottom. And strangely enough, it was the father that kind of it accidentally introduced him to all this, pulled her to this extremity, right? And this is just Kasuge trying to figure himself out, and at this, the mother is very scared. In regards to the parental-kid relationship, that's what I could muster up. Yeah.
I mean, just while we're on this topic, another thing I'll just quickly mention was his father in chapter 28, when Kasuga sort of snaps at his father and says, you're the one that taught me about Les Fleurs de Mal, and just starts asking him lots of questions, and then his father sort of shuts him up and says, what's wrong is wrong. I can say nothing more than that. So I'm not sure whether that's just sort of, parental authority, or him actually understanding a lot more than literature about Les Fleurs de Evil than Kasuga. But I'm not sure how much difference either would make.
Yeah, I just want to say in that chapter, the eyes of the cops are very unsettling. But anyways, yeah, Taka, what have you done? What are you thinking? Oh my goodness! And then this is like, the look on her mother's face in chapter 29, chapter 28, sorry, what you're talking about after the interrogation is like, you know, like the I mean, I don't know how to put into words the level of not disappointment, just utter fear and yeah, just utter fear of what he's going through, right? And that's expressed by the mother. And then Tako is, he's always calm. For the father is always calm for some reason, but you can see the disappointment in his eyes. Tell us so that we can understand. And and then Kasuge is like, what the hell else do you want to know from me? But no, anyways, going to what you're referring to, right? Um, the father is just grounding him, to which Kasuge tries to sneak outside, and the father stops him and he says, "You were told that you were forbidden to go outside. Return to your room." And yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just to clarify a little, the question I'm trying to get at is all of this sort of perversity in him wanting to go to the other side Baudelaire's fault, which his father has read, he said what's wrong is wrong, he can say nothing else, or is it Kasuga's fault? That was sort of what's behind my question, sorry.
Oh, okay. No, sorry, I was going a completely different direction. I mean, it'd be dishonest to say it's Baudelaire's fault, right? I think Baudelaire kind of instigated what was already there, right? I think it's completely natural for, to quote Kasuge, I think it's completely natural for like teenagers to, and I'm gonna quote Kasuge here, to kind of like expand on the way he lives, right? He kind of wants to, stretch his legs out and kind of, have some kind of autonomy, right? And so if you want the autonomy, the worst thing that you could do, the worst thing that could happen to you is to get grounded. And so I think that is in, especially boys, I think, in every I don't know much about girls, but especially every teenager, right? And so I don't think you could exactly put the blame on the book Flowers of Evil, right? But it is what kind of triggered everything, right? It triggered what you had a predisposition to, right? You can't blame Princip for starting World War One, for killing the Archduke, when there were so many dormant causes laying beneath the surface, right? He just lit the match, and I think Flowers of Evil lit the match, but it could have been any other book, right? It could have been any other event. I think that rebellion was born to happen, just as it happens to many of teenagers, to which, yeah, and I hope this answers the question, right? To which Kasuge says, wasn't it you, Dad, the one who read Flowers of Evil to me, and you were the one who taught me the truth that those worthless masses are ignorant of, and why are you paying heed to mom's and society's mood? And it's like, why did you marry mom? Why did you raise me? Did you just give in? You're just another bug on the dump heap. Let go of me, shit eater. To which his dad says, what's wrong is wrong. I can say no more than that. And I think deep inside, his dad doesn't have any good rebuttal, right? He doesn't have any, like, he can't out correct Kasuge. The only leverage he has is his authority of being a father, because deep down he kind of knows that he kind of gave in. And so we do see a conflict in his father, because he knows that by grounding him, he's going to make Kasuge repeat the same mistakes that he did, which was kind of give in to all this crap. But at the same time, because he already gave in to societal norms being a father, he can't let his son go autonomous. But anyways, yeah, to answer your question, I think it was dormant in him just as it is dormant in many people. Flowers of Evil did trigger it, but it could have been any other thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, actually. Yeah, so it's just neither Kasuge nor Baudelaire's fault. It was just a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that stuff about the father stuff. That stuff about the father stuff, yes. That stuff about the father. Yeah, and that's a nice side note
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about, so thank you for that.
Mm-hmm, you're welcome. It is a trend in a lot of what's his face? Oh crap, Shuzo. O- Oshimi Shuzo's work, where we do see a lot of antagonistic women. The women are always batshit crazy. They always lash out. You know, they're always abusive. They're always domineering. And then whatever authority male figure, it's either absent or just completely meek. And we do see that. We see it in Trail of Blood. We see it to a smaller extent in Happiness, and we see especially here, as you've just pointed out, Elliot. Right? We do see him kind of absolutely demoralized. And you almost do have to pity him, right? You have to give it to the dad, right? He's just, and it's almost like I think he is conflicted, right? Because I don't think it's an accident that of all the books, like dude, who reads a kid Flowers of Evil, you know? It's such a weird choice, but I think unconsciously he wanted to have his own son, you know, not turn out the way he did. But whoever he turned out to be, right, the father, because he's already gived in, he can't let Kasuge manifest, right? So it's like there's a half of you that wants it to manifest. So that's why you read it for Arzivo, and then the other half of you, which is already gave in, you can't let it manifest. You ground him, right? You put it under house arrest. And I think Kasuge, the difference between Kasuge and the father is that Kasuge was willing to make the step from, you know, intellectual extremities to actual practical extremities, whereas the father never made that step, right? The father always remained in intellectual extremities. That's why he did what he did, but in the end ended up, you know, living a very domesticated, married family life. Yeah. So yeah, no, that's all I have to say on the family side note. Thanks for bringing it up. I totally forgot about it. It's been a long time since I've read it. But I hope I covered it sufficiently. Yeah. I guess, is there any other side notes that you want to put in? You or Akshay?
None for me.
Yeah. All right. What about you, Ellie?
No, I'm fine.
All right, cool. Yeah, I guess next week we'll go over the next. I already put it in the chat, anyways, right? Next week, same time, we'll meet and we'll go over up to chapter 34. No, I'm sorry, chapter 45. Yeah, we did chapter 34 today. But yeah, cool. I guess I'll see you guys next week then. This has been the second episode of the recording. I'll see you next week. End the recording now.